Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. This is Adam Ratliff with Adam So Fun, and we've had a little bit of a hiatus. A little bit of life happened, but we're back and I'm finally getting to quilt this panel quilt. So this quilt is going to be done. We're going to do borders a few ways. We're going to stitch the interior. And I was trying to think of the best way to stitch this. I actually started this a few weeks ago before I went, and I was in and out of the house a lot. And I just didn't get a chance to, I wasn't in it. I wasn't in the mood. I couldn't get the mojo going, right? So, and I couldn't think of the right way to do it. I have to stitch this a little bit different than I would in real life because I'm making these videos and they have to kind of flow. So what I'm going to do is we are going to stitch the center panel first, just the center part. This is where your typical edge to edge would go. I'm going to show you how to stitch the edge to edge when you have borders around it and you don't want to actually go over those borders. In real life, I would do my border pieces first, but we'll talk about that when we go back and do those border pieces. This quilt does have 3 different borders on it, so we're going to do each of them. Well, we're going to do that one that way. Wrap, corners of... Oh, we're going to do each of them a different way. I forgot. I was like, there's 3 ways to do it, but there is 3 ways to do it. There's 100 ways to do it. I'm going to show you the way I like to do it. It might not be the way that you do it at home. If it works for you, continue to do it the way that you like to do it. This is just the way I do things, the Adam So Fun way, which is not even my way, it's just the way I do it. So this video is going to focus on stitching that edge to edge in the center block. The next video will be a video on, wrapping the corner. There'll be a video on adding a cornerstone, and there'll be a video on chunking. Now, I am not a chunker. I am always going to stitch my quilt and then turn it and then add my final 2 borders. I find that's easier for me, but that is not easier for everyone. Some people don't have that option. So I will show you how to chunk it, but we'll get there when we get there. So I'm going to come bring you in close. But before we get into the meat of the video, remember, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, because as we get new subscribers and we hit those milestones, I do some great giveaways. What else? Oh, follow me on social media. I'm Adam So Fun with an SEW on Facebook and Instagram. You see a lot of stuff there that doesn't actually hit the YouTube channel. But without further ado, we will see you up close and personal with this quilt. All right, here we are at the quilt, and let me get this tape out of the way. I've already done my stabilization. Now, in real life, would I go through and stitch all my ditches and stuff first? Probably not. I'm probably going to try to work through things as I go, but I need to be able to roll back and forth for this little quilt, so I did that here. If I were real life quilting this, I would, let's say this was one border in my interior. I always do my top border first, so I would do my top border. I would stitch the ditch down the sides, but I would set up my interior for my whole quilt. So my first step is to measure this. Now I've already done it, that's why my tape was out, and it measures, I can't even see which side is the side, so I'm measuring it here, and it measures 14 by 23.5. I'm going to need those measurements to set up my design on that interior. So I have my measurements here. I would have already stitched my borders and corners, and I don't worry about, I'm not a chunker, so I'm not worrying about how long it is. I'm just going to set up my sides and get that taken care of. And like I said, I'll show you that in another video. Because this is a big border, if this were the quilt, because I'm not chunking it, I'm not going to stitch it piece by piece, I would stabilize this border somehow. Usually I'm just going to run a big zigzag or some type of stitch in here. Anytime that border is more than 4 inches wide, I'm going to run a zigzag through it. I like to keep it nice and stable. In this case, because I am rolling it back and forth, I've stitched the ditch in all of these ditches to stabilize it. This is not a big quilt. This is just a little tiny wall hanging. So it's going to be fine for what I'm doing here. But if I had a longer quilt and my border was about yay big, I might run a little zigzag through the center just to hold everything tight. I'm also using a 70-30 batting, 70-30 batting from Quilter's Dream. This one isn't super thick, so I shouldn't have much stuff shift on me. So now that we know that the center's here, and I'm confirming that it's 14 by 23.5, I'm going to mark my area. And I always do this. It doesn't matter. I always come through and mark my area. So we're going up to our Pro Stitcher screen. You can see the flamingos in the background. All right, so we're at our Pro Stitcher screen. I am stitching this panel out 12 stitches per inch. I have crews, and I have my crews set at 175 because I am going to be using Pro Stitcher, and I want to make sure I'm in crews, and I want to make sure that is going somewhat fast for that. So I'm going to my area tab because I need to set an area, because the area is where we're going to tell the machine where we want it to stitch. So I'm going to tilt you down, laser light at the needle. That's one of my favorite things. And oh, there we are. So I have my laser light, and I'm going to hit my star button. So because I'm in the area tab, I can hit my star button on my handlebar. If you have an Avante, Amara, or not Avante, an Amara, a Forte, or an Infinity. And I'm just working my way around. I am going to lock the camera now. I was holding the phone. And the reason I do this going all the way around at little increments and not just the whole line at once is, especially a pieced quilt that's not a panel, it is not always straight. So this is going to help me make sure I can see how everything is looking. And especially like these sides are not really that straight at all. So once I have it, I've done my throat space. This is how you're going to do it on any of the machines. I just happen to have a large throat. So I can see my space is 14.23 by 13.77. So it's actually more than 14. Look how crooked that is. Oh my gosh. So I know my height is going to be around 23.5. So now I have my really wonky triangle or rectangle, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. So now we're going to go to my File tab, Design Open, and we're going to open the design we want. Now there's different designs that we can use. Let me find my designs. I never remember where I saved them. Oh my gosh. Nope. See. Designs. Oh, I need to update this. I keep forgetting. Continuous line. So there's different designs we can use. When you have something like this, where you need to stitch between one point and another, you want to look for a border-to-border design. And I'll show you the difference between a border-to-border design. So I'm going to open Clover Edge to Edge. This is in the Handy Quilter designs. I'm also going to open up Feather Delight, so I can kind of show you the difference. Now I'm going to tilt you back up. I just file design open, and I open these two. Again, they're both in the HQ or the 1-PS Designs continuous line. So this is Clover. See how it's kind of a square? Border to border designs are usually set up to be some type of square where when you stitch it out, it has, like, it's a line to line. Think of border to border being like line to line. Whereas, oh, I can't move that. I'm going to move this away. I'm trying to move it so we can see, but then I can't move it because my crosshairs are there. Feather Delight, do you see how it's more of a flowy, where things are going to have to meet in the middle? This is what we call pretty much a panto, or an edge to edge. You'll see that some of them meet up a little bit different, but most pantos or pantographs will kind of have this wave to them where they sit in and they nest with each other. All right, everyone. So, full disclosure, I spent all last night trying to find a design I liked, and I couldn't find something that I really wanted to put on this panel. So, we're going with Field of Flowers. So, we were talking about a border-to-border kind of how they differ from a pantograph. So, remember this this Feather Delight design, which is in your Pro Stitcher Designs, is more like what a pantograph would be, or a panto they call it. It's going to kind of swoop around and wave where things are going to nest. Border to border usually is more square than Field of Flowers, which is what I'm going to use, but it kind of is like a square, and you're going to make that square up. We're going to end up using this one. This is Field of Flowers. I'm going to resize it, and we're going to end up doing some edits. The thing you want to be careful about is getting these designs to fit exactly how you want it, because the width of this design, how it's digitized, is 11.6, and the whole width of our interior is, what did I say, 14? So we either need to do 2 of them or kind of stretch this one out. If we stretched it, it would probably look okay, but I want to do more than one repeat because that would be not a fun video to watch if I just stuck one in here. So I'm going to shrink this, and I know that my my box is 14 inches wide, or pretty close. You know, we can see that it's getting skewed a little bit, but I'm going to my Modify tab. I will go to resize, and I always use the Modify tab when I resize things. And I'm going to, on my sidebar, hit my lock, and you'll see, let me move these over. You can still see on the screen. So you'll see when the lock is off, you either get a line for width or a line for height, depending on which one you have selected. When you turn the lock on, you get that for both, because when you change one, it's going to change the other. And I know my width of my total box is 14, so I'm going to change the width of this to 7, and that's going to shrink and keep it proportional. And now I'm going to be able to do one repeat whenever we actually fill it up. I'm going to close these. So if you select a design and you don't want it, you can go to File, Close, Selected. Select my next one, Close, Selected, and now I just have the one design here. I wish I could take my crosshairs off so it wasn't in the way. They're going to be there. That's how it is. Actually, I'm going to modify this, and I'm going to shrink it down a little bit smaller. So this is 6.75, because we can fit things in here and then fix that later. Well, right now my height is 5.25, and we know the height of this whole box is 23.5. So we're going to have to do some edits there, but we'll work with that when we get there. So now I'm going to repeats, because I want to repeat this, and I'm always going to start by hitting my fill button, because the fill is going to put as many repeats into my area that it can without distorting the image. We'll see that because I haven't updated yet. I'm going to hit point to point so we get my point to point. And here's my design. A few things. I want it to start at the very top. What am I going to do? That's a long stretch. Let me zoom into this interaction between the 2 rows. And I'm going to go to my vertical, and I'm going to shrink my gap a little bit. So we'll look at that. So we're going to have to stretch this to make this fit. And this is one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of when I have to do this, because if I stretch this and I have my vertical stretch on, it kind of distorts that image. I'm not a big fan of having that image get distorted. I'm going to horizontal, and I'm going to hit stretch 2. I'm not a big fan of distorting that image like that. I like the way they're digitized, and I like it to stay that same kind of aspect ratio. You know, if this had any circles in it, then those circles wouldn't look right, because they would turn to ovals. So you have to be careful with the design you're working on and what you do to it. We can also see that the stretch has stretched it outside of the box a little bit. We'll take care of that when we get to those rows. For the sake of this is how we're going to do it. To me, it's going to look, it looks okay for the moment. So I am going to, very important, hit baseline. And now I'm going to zoom into my top row, because we see that it's up there a little high. I am going to move this a little bit. So I'm going to go to modify. First thing I want to do is I want to shrink it from side to side because we can't be going out of my pink lines because then I'm going into my borders. So I'm going to shrink it a little bit. Oh, I didn't want to leave that lock off. Or I want to turn off the lock and shrink it from side to side until we're inside. We're good. Now I'm going to baseline again. Just because we're working with this big design, I want to make sure I snap that baseline on. Now I'm going to go to reposition, and we have this nudge down here. And nudge will just shift it a tiny bit. So I'm going to nudge it down just a little bit so we're not hitting any of the lines, and nudge it over. And I'm good over here. Let me see what's going on here. We're good there. And we're good here. Now, again, I don't like that it stops right here. So when it stops, I'm going to stitch over a little bit. And I'm going to do the same thing at this start point. So I'm going to zoom into my start point. I will move my machine to where that start point is. And I'm going to show you where it is on the quilt. So my start point is approximately right here. So I'm about 3 stitches away from my seam, but I really like to start in that seam because I can do my tack offs in that seam. This is why when I stitch edge to edge, I stitch over the edges. So I will just move to the left, do my needle down, needle up. I'm holding my top thread. Today I'm using So Fine in the top and the bottom. Actually, I think I'm using So Fine in the top and bottom line in the bobbin. So I've done my tie off, and I'm going to stitch over. I want to be right next to the start point, and I'll show you what I'm looking at. I'm lining my horizontal line up with my start point. And now I can just take a few tiny stitches until I get over to my start point. And so now I'm pretty close. I might not be exactly on, but I'm okay with that. I know I have room to start my first pass. So I am going to go to my Pro Stitcher tab. I don't need to tie off. I already did that. And I don't need to pull up and move out of the way because I've already done those. So I'm going to turn everything off. I'm just going to say stitch. Make sure my Opti stitch is optimal for me. It looks good. And the other thing, I want to make sure my auto jumps are off. Perfect. Pro Stitcher run. Everything looks good. I'm going to hit run, and it's going to start stitching. And I'll see you when we're back after it stitches this row. All right, so the first pass is done, and it stopped. But again, I don't like it to just stop in the middle of the no man's land. So I'm just going to do a few needle down, needle ups, continuing that kind of direction that it's going until I get to my seam, and then I can do my tie offs, bring up my bobbin and trim. All my gadgets hanging here. And now I have my first row done, and you can see that it starts and it ends in a seam. Now I'm going on to the next row. I have threads everywhere. Oh, everything's so dirty because I've been gone. All right, so long jump pause. I'm just going to exit out of there. I'm going to see if I can stitch one more row. I can almost stitch 1.5. Okay, so I can stitch one more row. So let's zoom in and look at that row first. How do we look? Over there, that looks pretty good. We're getting a little close to the edge here. But look, if we look at this side, see how we have a little bit of a gap? I will move my needle to the end point, or to the farthest right point, which is basically the end point. And if I look down, I have like, that's a quarter, 3/8 of an inch. And that's a little bit big. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to edit this a little bit again. So I'm going to hit my zoom. So if I had to advance, which we'll do in a second, I would go in, I would advance it, and then go in and kind of mess with, or I'd make a new area and then mess with this. But in this case, I don't need to do that. So I'm going to hit cancel. And now I'm looking at row 2 only. And what I need to do, I need to make it a little bigger. So I'm going to nudge it to the right a little bit. Oops, you can't see. So I went to modify, reposition, and then nudge. I'm going to resize just the width. I don't ever need to work with the height, not yet, maybe the last row. And I will increase the width a little bit. That looks good. I hit it once, and now we can see that we're pretty close over here, and we're really close on this side, like almost too close. So let's go to reposition again, and I'm just going to shift it over. Now I'm not touching there. Swing to the other side. I'm good here, and I'm good there. And we were really close on the other side. We're pretty close here. I'm going to nudge it one more time just to kind of split that difference. So now, is everything going to line up exactly perfect? No, because I'm nudging this and moving a little bit. Are you going to notice it when it's done? Absolutely not. I'm checking one more time to make sure I'm not going to hit that bar. And now we're ready to stitch out row 2. But remember, we hit cancel. So if I hit start, it's going to go back up to the start at the first row. So we need to tell it we want to be at the second row. So we're going to our Pro Stitcher tab, new start end, and on our start column, I'm going to use my jumps. You might have umps depending on if you've updated. And that is just because the side screen is just small enough, skinny enough that it can't put the J there. So that's why you have umps. It will not affect it anyway if it has umps. You can try to hold this and pull it out a little bit, but I like more workspace, so that doesn't bother me. I'm going to hit down, and now we're starting here, and I'm going to do the same thing. I wonder if I move you back. Well, you're not going to be able to see because I'm going to be in the way, but you'll kind of see. So if you look up here, there's my start point. I'm moving my machine. Oops, I just kicked the camera. You can still see it. I'm moving my machine to where that start point is, and I'll zoom in. I like to zoom in a lot. Get it right close. Oh, that's very close. It's actually pretty close to my border. I've done my tie off. Everything's ready. We'll go back up at we'll leave you down here. I'm going up to the screen, and I will hit run. I still have everything off, and I'm going to hit proceed. Alright, so we've ended row 2, and I'm going to do the same thing, just some needle ups and downs. I'm basically placing my stitches to get them over to my border. And I'm just continuing and following that path. That's one of the things I love about the laser light is you can see right where you're going to be stitching. Do my tie-offs, bring up my bobbin. So now we have the first 2 rows stitched out. We have row 1 and row 2. Obviously, I can't do row 3, so we're going to need to advance. So I'm going to advance this the way I like to do it, using the drag and drop. There is a video for that, advancing drag and drop or something like that. I don't know what it's called, but I have a video for the way I do it. I don't do the needle down. But once we get advanced, we will be right back. All right, so here we are. We have advanced. I'm to the bottom piece, or whatever piece you would be on. It would be the next piece, but I'm to the bottom piece. If you can see this, I don't know if you can see this because of the lighting, but I have a little ripple here. And this happens because I didn't go through and I didn't stabilize this. It was just one big kind of piece of the interior. So this is why I always say, like, if my border is a certain size, I'm going to stabilize it. We can see a few ripples over here too. This isn't very big. This is going to be fine. This isn't very big. This is going to be fine. But this is why we stabilize it. This is why we add some basting in there. I have this, but if I just kind of push it up, I can distribute all of that into my quilt top. And now that ripple is gone, and it's going to be pretty easy to deal with because this is a small section. If I had a big quilt and I tried to do that, it's not going to work. So you always want to go in and do some type of basting to stabilize that. It's very important. We look good there. So let's look at our screen, see what's going on. So we have our screen. I forgot to advance. Let me advance this really quick. So this is my method. Again, there's a video for this that has more in it, but I'm gonna do this really quick. First step, I'm gonna find a spot in my design on my Pro Stitcher screen and put my crosshairs on it. And I need it to be a spot that I can find on my screen and on my quilt top. There we go. I'm perfect. Now on my sidebar, I'm going to tap drag. When you touch it, it turns green and says drop. Now anytime I move my machine, the design is going to move with me. So now I'm taking my machine to that same point on my quilt top. So I'll turn you down. Usually it's straight back from where you stitched. And in this case, it's this little hook right here. I don't even think you can see it because of the lighting, but I'm taking it to that little hook. That's what the laser light's for. So now I have that same point on my quilt top that my crosshairs are on. And if I show you the screen, we get this question a lot. People start freaking out because their design is outside of that area. We'll talk about that in a second. I'm going to hit drop. And now I can move my machine freely without moving that design. So I've moved out of my area, and a lot of people start getting kind of anxious. I'm going to also hit cancel because we're going to have to do some editing. A lot of people get a little bit anxious here because they're outside their area. They think they're going to hit a bar. If I didn't hit cancel, it would want to go and stitch that next line. It would want to start stitching on that next jump because it stitched it's stitched to this dot. Long jump, pause. I advanced. It wants to stitch here. I hit cancel because I'm going to have to do some editing again, and I want to do that editing. It won't let you do that editing if you're still in the kind of stitching process. The other thing is we're outside this area, but that area is now obsolete. We don't even need it anymore. So I'm going to my area, and I'm going to hit clear in the ribbon to get rid of it. So we know we need to stitch row 3. So since I'm here, I can see my start point. Let me hit refresh so we can see. I can see my start point. I need to move that down. So Pro Stitcher tab, new start end in the ribbon. Under my jumps or my umps, I'm pushing down. And now I've moved the start point to start 3. I like to do this because it's going to help me visualize what row I'm doing. I'm also going to move my machine to the bottom line. We're going to make an area in a second, but look how close we are. We did pretty good measuring. I was a little bit surprised that I got that good, but that's fine. So my first step is I need to make an area around all of this. Now, if I look at my quilt top, all of this is already stitched, so I don't really need an area that high, but I am going to make it just because it's there. I don't have to use it just because I make it, but I'm going to make it because it's a visual representation of what's going on my screen. So I'm going to my area tab, and I will create this really quick. All right, so now we have our new area. We're working on row 3. Everything is lined up where it's supposed to be. I advanced, everything is good. I can do a check and just put my machine on a point. That looks good. We can do the same thing on this side. That looks good. So we're lined up perfect. So now, let's zoom into row 3. We have to look at row 3. Don't worry about the top and bottom. We're only looking at the sides and see how they interact. So here, we're a little close. So I'm going to my modify, reposition my ribbon, and we're going to nudge it a little bit to the right because we want it off of this line. I can use my scroll bar to scroll over. And we look good. That looks good. I mean, we don't have a lot of editing to do. So, like we've done before, I'm going to zoom in. I know that this is going to fit, but my best practice, and I always teach this in class, best practice is to make sure your horizontal line can go lower on your screen than your design. That means you won't hit one of the front bars. And same thing, if you can push the horizontal line higher than the row you're stitching or whatever you're stitching, that means you won't hit a back bar. So our bars are good. I'm going to zoom into my start point, come over here and find it, and do my little tie-offs in the ditch, and then needle up, needle down until I get to that start. My bobbin. So now we have one more row to do, and let's tilt you up. This will be, because it's the last row of the whole process, this one's going to be a little bit different because we have to worry about, so we're going to hit cancel because I want to resize this. So on this final row, we have to worry about the height, but we also want to keep the height of the row where it is, or the top of the row where it is. But we do need to change that height because see how we're sticking out down here. And then we also want, let me see if I can zoom. Oh, there, that's much better. So we're sticking out. So we need to shrink the height a little bit. And the width, we're going to have to shift that a little bit too. So let's see how close we are on this side. Again, we're touching. So this panel was either printed a little bit off or I did a really good job lining it up straight. And let's just blame it on the printing. Actually, it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, it's just a quilt for video, right? So first thing, I'm going to go to my modify, reposition. I'm going to nudge this over to the right a little bit. And that looks good. We're barely off over here. That seems like about how it's been. So next, I want to put my crosshairs at the top of my row. So at the highest point of my row. So if I look at this, it's going right over the top of these top two pieces because we're about to shrink this because we need it to fit, and I need to know how to get where I need those top pieces, these top petals to be. So now I'm going to resize. I'm not messing with the width. The width was fine, but we do need to change the height. So I'm changing my height. I have my my box. I'm going to minus. And it's moving itself up because it's moving. It's not just shrinking this one row. It is shrinking the entire design. We're working with the entire design here. We're only looking at the bottom row, but everything is shrinking towards the top because it shrinks towards the middle. There we go. And I'm going to do one more. No, I'm going to do one more because we're going to have to go high enough that I can pull this back down. So maybe one more. Let's do one more and check that. All right, so now I am going to reposition, and I'll just hit my down button until those designs line back up where they're supposed to be. And we're still out just a little bit. So I'm going to resize and shrink it a little bit more. Reposition and move it down. And we are in the spot. It's tight here, but these places look okay. And a matter of fact, right there is where I missed, where I didn't stitch straight. So I missed my ditch a little bit. So this is gonna be okay. If I was worried about this, so let's look at it close. It gets really close. If you're ever worried about something like that, if you bring your needle to where that shows it's gonna stitch, and you stick your needle right there, I can see that it's not actually getting to the line. I mean, it is very close. It's like less than a stitch length away, but it's just gonna get close, and I'm okay with that. So now we have this row ready. I'm gonna zoom back into that one row. Everything looks good. We have to move our start point. Remember, we're always going to move the start point. So Pro Stitcher, new start end, and in my umps, I'm pushing down. And now I can stitch this final row just like we've been doing. I'm going to come over here and pull up my thread. This row is going to be a little bit smaller, but the difference is not recognizable. All right, so now we're ready to stitch. So I will go to Quilt. All of my selections are there. My start point's where I want it, and hit run. And now my interior panel is done. So it's nothing too hard. It's just a little bit more of a process because you have to worry about going off into your borders. So if I had a larger quilt, I would just every time I advance, I'm creating a new area, adjusting that border accordingly to fit inside said area. And then I'm like, I see the shadow here, and I'm not really sure where it's coming from. Oh, it's the handlebar. So yeah, so you're creating an area, adjusting the row to fit inside that area. Like I said, there's some designs that work better than others. This one actually worked pretty well. And if you look at this design and you look at this design, we know we shrunk this smaller. You cannot tell. Like, this looks the exact same size as the flower above it, and we know we did those adjustments. We shrank it together, so those little tiny adjustments are not noticeable. Now if I were sticking something inside a center thing, I would not do like a crosshatch, because you're going to have to adjust that, and that is going to be very hard to adjust and make noticeable. Anything that touches, maybe orange peel or one of those, anything that the first row has to touch the second one is going to be a little bit harder. You can always come in here and crop out the edges. Like I set up all my edge to edges. I could have done that. I would get some overstitching on the edge, and that's okay, but I wanted to show you, because a lot of people don't like that, I wanted to show you how, if you wanted strictly to stitch in here, no overstitching, no cropping, nothing like that, how you would do it. So if you were going to crop out the edges, so much easier because you just create your area, make your design bigger, crop out the edges, and go for it. But this is the little bit harder way, probably a more finished look. That looks really good. So this is it. We'll see you back here in a second. All right, so that was putting a design inside something that has borders. I don't know how else to say it. But that is video 1 in this series. Now we're going on to do the 3 borders. Remember, if I were doing this in real life, I would have done my first border first, stitched my ditches while I went through and stitched my center panel part, or whatever your quilt in the middle. When I got to the bottom, I would stitch my bottom borders, and we'll talk about it when we're actually doing the border videos. And then I would turn my quilt and do my sides. But again, we'll talk about that in the border video. So this is stitching the interior of whatever that has borders when you do not want to stitch across those borders. As always, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you're notified when new videos drop. Don't forget to follow me on social media. Adam's So Fun with an SEW on Facebook and Instagram, where you see more videos than, or more content than what's posted here, because this is only the videos. In our next video, we'll do borders the first way, which is we will put in designs that actually wrap around that border and work down the quilt. So we will see you in that next video. Bye, everyone.